Okay, let's call ourselves to order. We just came out of executive session. Reasons as detailed on the top of the agenda. This meeting is being brought, it's 7:12. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The community concert series begins this Thursday, June 13th. It starts at 6:30 to 8 p.m., rain or shine until the end of August. The three bands happening in June. June 13th is the Merrimack Valley Concert Band. On June 20th, John Curtis. And on June 27th, the Quentin Calawert Band. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And you can see the further ones for July and August on the website.
Chairman, if I might, just to correct one thing, I did write on the agenda, it's every Thursday through August 29th, so with the exception of July 4th. There is no concert on July 4th. So it's posted correctly on the website, but I made a mistake on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that too?
Yes.
When you say rain and shine, they do go indoors, so they don't have to sit in the rain. So they do. No, but that means something to people. They do go in the annex, so it's every week, no matter what. But when it's raining or inclement weather, they go in the annex, which is now air conditioned, so you enjoy yourself. Thank you.
So the bicentennial is really coming up soon now, and the list of the events: Saturday, July 6th is opening day, a pancake breakfast and ceremony and town picture in the morning, starting at 8 and going. The picture is at 11 on that's Saturday, July 6th. Monday, July 8th is a History and Heritage Day and a reception on July 8th. Angus, could you just give a little bit more about that? I don't know too much about that.
The History and Heritage Day?
Yes.
That's going to be at the Town Hall, and it's going to be a combination. I know the Historical Society is putting together some exhibits. It's going to have some refreshments and be I think, a nice gathering to recognize our history and heritage.
I think there's a little bit more to add to that. And there is the Arts Foundation had commissioned.
Yeah, we had Jen Solis from the put me on my foundation hat, Pawtucket Arts Foundation. So it's a day. It's a collaboration between the West Newbury Historical Society, the Pawtucket Arts Foundation, and the Pawtucket Regional High School School District Arts Program. And it's called Past is Prologue, the essence of a community told through art and history. There's going to be exhibits from the Historical Society that show sort of mapping overlays of land as it was and land as it is now. There's going to be a marvelous arts exhibit, visual arts exhibit from the high school and other students from Pawtucket that's being sort of put together by Marcia Nadeau over there at Pawtucket. And we commissioned Kevin Bowe to produce a film called Voices of West Newbury. And it's a collection of some longtime residents talking about the lore and the traditions of West Newbury. It's very endearing, very sweet. And that's going to be running on a loop throughout the days. The exhibit is going to be open from July 6th through the 11th, and it's noon to 6 p.m. And then the reception is going to be in the evening of July 8th. Please, you're all going to get invitations. I hope you all can come. Thanks.
Thank you. Other events, Tuesday, July 9th, there will be an ice cream social at Long Hill Orchard. That's from 6 to 8. On Wednesday, July 10th, there will be a student art show and what West Newbury means to me at the Page School during the afternoon. Thursday, the 11th, There will be a concert, as mentioned before, a concert, and then after the concert this particular night, there will be a movie at the bandstand.
Move it to dancing in the annex.
Or is that in the annex? Is that,
It's one of those bandstand annex, if it's raining, it's out, if it's nice, it's outside, if it's raining, it's inside. That's
Okay.
why they have them both, right? Have they contacted you, Lisa, about the movie?
No, I'm retired.
No, just to tell you where you got you got
No,
the.
Teresa, I think they're speaking with Teresa.
Yeah. They asked me how we did it before, and I sent them to you, Teresa. If it's nice out, they have a big blow-up screen, they do it outside, if
Yeah,
not,
it's
they'll
fun.
do it inside, yeah, great time.
Friday, July 12th, there will be a dance and a barbecue at the Old Town Hall. And finally, the big event will be the Field Day on Saturday, July 13th at Pipes Day, picnic, concerts, exhibits, and culminating with fireworks in the evening of July 13th. And finally, there are tickets still available for West Newbury Day at Fenway Park. I thought I'd just mention one thing. I know that we had a wonderful Memorial Day parade. There has been some controversy about some of the attendees at the parade, and the Selectmen will address that issue at a forthcoming meeting. Everyone will be informed, but we want to get more information, talk to more people, and have an organized discussion about this. Okay. Our first item on the agenda is Representative Muir is going to discuss the Merrimack River Task Force, and I see Senator Tarr is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. I know this is a busy time, I know there's a lot on your agenda, so we appreciate you carving out some time on the agenda for us.
This is very important, because there's nothing better than the perfect time of year to start talking about waste in the Merrimack.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Since it is boating season.
And there's a lot of people in the water. I mean, we all go over that Rocks Village Bridge and we're seeing a lot of people and cars fishing the chatter running, I guess, so that's a good thing. But there are people fishing in that, not just from boats and kayaks, but also wading in the river. And we want to make sure people are clear on the hazards that are happening there. The page I gave you is right from the EPA's website. And the link for that is at the very top of it. I'm hoping that maybe the town can put this on the website as well, so people are aware of what's going on. This does an excellent job of explaining what a CSO is. It's at the bottom of the first page, and the C stands for combined, because in our larger cities of Haverhill, Lawrence, Lowell, as well as Manchester and Nashua, we combine surface runoff water from our roads, sidewalks, parking lots with sewage. And on a typical day, that's not a problem. Sewage treatment plant treats it and releases the treated water in the Merrimack. Everything's great. If there's any amount of precipitation over a certain amount, the volume is so great that the sewage treatment plant cannot handle that volume of water. So that water is released into the river untreated. So there's raw sewage mixed in with surface runoff going into the river, like I said, untreated. And so the media has done a pretty good job reporting on this. This was in the Newbury Report News last year, and that's good. But we wanted to make sure people were completely clear on the hazards. And if you look at this page, that's not the only issue. Sure, go ahead.
Lenny, do you know who makes the call when it's, okay, it's rained 2 inches? And whose call is it to determine, we got to, because it's a kind of a serious decision. Is it go up to the
It's actually,
the
that's a great
DPW director of the city or town? Does it ask the mayor, or who makes that call?
No, it's designed that way. The sewage treatment plants were actually designed that way. I want to make clear, they're not broken, they're not mismanaged, they're not malfunctioning.
No, I know, but who makes the call to let the
federal
outflow
government made
go?
the call when they permitted it, and probably said you can build it this way, and then if it rains 4 inches one night, we're gonna put sewer.
No,
in.
what happens, and Rick was at the meeting, we had
Yeah.
the meeting last Friday, and what happens is, these pipes combine and they go towards the sewage treatment plant, and it's just an outfall. Once it reaches a certain level, no one decides. It just,
Oh, it just happens. Okay.
But if they built bigger pipes and bigger sewage treatment plants, they would be able to handle it. But somebody had to make a decision that said, hey, if it rains 4 inches, there's going to be sewage into the water. It might happen once a year, might happen 10 times a year. Somebody had to make that decision because, you know what I mean? So
Right,
at some
right.
point, somebody had to say, okay, it's okay.
They couldn't make it so big, that it would have been too expensive.
Yeah, I think it's actually more complicated than that. I mean, I was at the same event that Lenny was at, was that last Thursday? I
Last
guess?
Friday.
Yeah, last Friday, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of water under the bridge since then, so to speak.
so to say, so to speak.
But, there are a lot of factors that determine whether or not there is a CSO for any particular municipality at any particular outfall on any particular event. And the base problem with the CSOs is that the stormwater drainage is uses the same drainage lines or the same pipes as the wastewater, sewage. And so when there's too much precipitation for the plants, for the sewage treatment plants to handle, then they have a intentional overflow so they don't overwhelm the sewage treatment plant and damage the sewage treatment plant, damage the process. The basic problem was a design issue back at the outset of the Clean Water Act in the early 1970s, or before that, in some communities put in sewage, in the early 1900s. But so it's kind of complicated. But I'm sorry.
So if I could just jump in for a minute. So a lot of this did begin to occur, or at least begin to be grappled with when the Clean Water Act was passed. There were certainly systems that were developed in advance of that. And I think, Len, you mentioned this and touched on it. Part of the issue is that it's not cost effective to design a treatment system that would effectively be able to treat the largest stormwater events, because it would be so large and you wouldn't be using that capacity on a regular basis that it wouldn't make a lot of sense. And so the treatment systems are designed for limits that are basically established by a federal permit called the NPDES permit, which is issued through the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. And that permit actually sets limits for types of discharge. And in fact, when there's a stormwater event and the system discharges in excess of those limits, that triggers a notification. And part of the issue is trying to have that notification not only go to the federal government, but to go to communities that are affected by the discharge. So in effect, we know that the river has issues of concern with regard to particularly nutrient loading situations, because you now have untreated effluent that's washing through the system. And as somebody mentioned already, if it really is somewhat of an automatic situation, because the system can't handle the volume. And so if you were to slow down the volume that's passing through it in a stormwater event, it would overwhelm the system. And so the valves are open to allow it to pass through so that no damage is done to the plant and it can retain its operability. Now, in every one of those instances, there is a licensed operator that is at all times responsible for the operation of the plant, and they are providing oversight. The difficulty is that we now live in an era where stormwater often contains things that are not necessarily healthy as well, and all of this is feeding into the river. And that's part of what we're all trying to address. And the way that I look at it, and Rick, you were there, Lenny was there, the way that I view it is that the first step here is to have good information so that we all understand what the shortcomings are of these plants. And then the next issue is to try to take action. And there are some instances where folks have taken some innovative kinds of action. So for instance, I believe it's in Fall River, the city itself, they developed these large detention tubes so that when there's a stormwater event, the additional effluent goes into those tubes and is held until the weather becomes drier, and then it can be run through the plant so that it's properly treated before a discharge. There are lots of systems like that that are being contemplated. The difficulty is the cost is extraordinary. And if you apply that cost over all of the permit holders, particularly in Massachusetts, you come up with a huge number. And that's one of the reasons we're going to have to work together, because if we take the position that only the community that is the host to the treatment plant is going to have to pay for this, they probably will be unable to do it. But if we treat it as more of a regional issue, and we work to leverage federal funding in particular, then hopefully we can begin to take some steps to increase treatment capacity. Again, not to make the plant so that it can always treat at the most maximum level of effluent, but so that that effluent can be controlled so that it can be treated at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something too, and so that I wasn't misinterpreted. You know, I made reference to the Clean Water Act and how things happened after the Clean Water Act. In fact, before the Clean Water Act, raw sewage was being dumped into the river all the time. It was never cleaned up. So the Clean Water Act actually addressed the vast majority of raw sewage and cleans it up before it, you know, so that the water that hits the river has already been substantially cleaned up. But it's only in significant rain events or precipitation events of one kind or another, or snow melt events.
That's exactly right, Rick.
Right,
Let's
yeah.
recall how this river looked, you know, not so long ago.
Yeah.
We had no fish living, we had no eagles and hawks living along the river like we do now. It's substantially cleaner.
You
And,
talk to some old timers and they go, there's houses down there?
Right.
There's smells, I mean,
Right.
now they're the most desirable houses.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, no, the
It's
river-
like,
the river was a
nobody
running
could
coast
live
itself.
down there, you know.
So we're cleaning up most of it, and the rest that, you know, outfalls into it. You know, they had a philosophy that back then. The saying was that the solution to pollution is dilution, meaning that any combined sewage overflows would be mixed with millions of gallons of water and dispersed, and it wouldn't be a problem. And it probably isn't unless a person is in the water. But what we learned last Friday, and Rick was there, what we saw was an uptick, a sharp uptick, in a number of people going to the emergency room with gastrointestinal disorders on the days following a CSO. And of course, the common thread was these were people that were in the water. So the whole point of this meeting is just
Or had
awareness.
contact with the water.
Exactly. Dogs were going to the vets with lesions on their skin. And so this is just an awareness thing. We want to get this website out so people understand what's going on. And as you read the other challenges to the river, you'll see that even if we fix the CSO problem tomorrow, there are still other issues. There is illicit discharges into the river. And we just want people to know about this. That's all. It's just an awareness campaign.
Is this something that, I mean, goes beyond the Commonwealth? I mean, the Merrimack is you know, a big part of it is in New Hampshire, and
Manchester actually is the heaviest.
so is this something that even if everyone in Massachusetts does their part, is it out of our hands, or are they addressing things too?
It's on their radar screen too.
So they definitely are, and one of the things that's triggering a lot of additional attention is that. Sure. I never usually need it, that's why.
I know. You and I generally don't, but just in case you're a little tired today.
So one of the things that's happening is that there's been a backlog of reauthorization of NPDES permits, and the backlog is very substantial. Many of those permits are now being reissued, and so, for instance, last Friday, draft permits were issued for the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, which is a regional facility, for the Lowell treatment system, and for the Haverhill treatment system. And as part of that permitting process, there's now a consideration of what additionally can be done. So, for instance, in those draft permits, there is now a requirement that downstream communities be notified within 4 hours of a discharge that exceeds the limits that's in the permit. That's something that didn't exist before. There's also a lot of consideration about testing, testing, for instance, in terms of what's being discharged. Now, some of that relates to metals, and other things, other testing that's going to be required relates more to chemicals and nutrient loading, which causes a problem for the health of the river. So as a result of this stepped up effort to renew the permits, again, many of which have been lingering for a very long time and are overdue, there is more focus on what can be done in terms of the technology, in terms of analyzing the contributions to the health of the river or lack thereof. And as part of that, Mr. Chairman, there is a discussion that's being had with every one of these treatment plants, regardless of which state they're in. Now, part of what we're hoping to do through the work of the task force that's been convened by the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, is to outreach to our neighbors to the north and say, can we collaborate in a way that we haven't really before? We're getting organized in Massachusetts. Can we now work with you as part of that process?
And what I've handed you is just some of the things that we're doing. A number of bills were filed, and what I've sent you was just a sample of what I call short-term, long-term, and medium-term. In the short term, we think the most important thing is notification. So there were several bills relating to coming up with a system of notifying the public. Representative Kelquist has Amesbury, Salisbury, Newbury Port. He's at the very end of the river. So he and I got together on a bill just to come up with a way to provide notification. And we don't know what form that's going to take. Should it be a reverse 9/11 system, something like an Amber Alert? Should we have the DEP be an area where people can go to get information? So that's going to be hashed out now. In the medium term, Representative Campbell of Methuen has a bill to require these wastewater treatment plants to have backup generators, something that some of them did not have. And so we'll come up with a funding.
No, that was a problem about a year ago. I believe North Andover's did not, yeah.
That's exactly right. And think about it, that's exactly when you need it, because they lose their power during a hurricane, a blizzard. That's whenever there's a large amount of precipitation is when we need these plants to be operating the most. And long term is coming up with a task force to actually come up with solutions to this problem. As Senator Todd just mentioned, there's a number of different ways. There's storage, there's the tubes that Fall River used. There's a number of different ways to handle this, so we're going to form a task force that will deal with that. Senator DeZoglio of Methuen submitted a bill to do just that. And we had a meeting already Friday. Rick Parker was there, and it was very informative. It was 2 hours long, and it flew by in that it was full of information that was very, very useful. We had a history of the river, about how and why this was happening, and we found it very helpful. All elected officials were there, and keep in mind, it's all three levels of government, but also what you said, Mr. Chairman, about the other states cooperating with us. New Hampshire has Manchester and Nashua dumping into the river, and so a notification system in Massachusetts is pretty useless unless they cooperate with us. So that is the goal. And the good news about that is we have a new congressperson. Lori Trahan took over for Nikki Songas, and she has been instrumental. She's already met with every state rep and senator on the river to discuss exactly this. And she's trying to pull in our neighbors to the north to be involved in it as well. And so she has a couple of bills to actually come up with funding to do something about this. And so if you can find a way to get Congress to come up with an infrastructure bill, maybe we can start talking about actual solutions. But she has been great. She's met with us. Yeah.
You know what I thought was kind of an interesting, and I know we don't want this topic to go on for the night, but just an interesting takeaway from the meeting on Friday was that you know, all the conversation has been about CSOs, you know, which are essentially point source releases, you know, and they can be pretty well defined, but there was some really interesting data shown of measurements that had been done over a multi-year period where there's real good data showing that sort of distributed releases, you know, just normal stormwater flow from every community along the river is probably a roughly equal, you know, approximately an equal problem, or at least the same order of magnitude as the CSOs.
Which is different.
And it's, yeah, it's different, but you can't define it. It's, you know, septic systems that are failing. It's it's junk that's been dropped. You know, somebody's you know, they blew out a gasket and dumped a bunch of oil as they're driving through West Newbury, and it ends up in the drain here and runs down to the river or wherever.
Pesticides.
Yeah, exactly, and stuff off of people's lawns. You know, nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers off of people's lawns. So. You know, so it kind of comes down to it's up to the communities that are the source of the CSOs, but it's also up to all of us to not be dumping stuff on the ground that's going to end up in the river.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, it ties in also part of why the conveyance systems and the stormwater treatment has been overwhelmed is because of the amount of development that's happened in the last 40 or 50 years. And until probably 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of the stormwater was just piped off the site. The goal was just get it downstream as quick as we can. Now the entire philosophy is recharge and trying to keep the stormwater on the site, get it back to recharge the aquifers, but also to keep it from overwhelming that downstream flood capacity. So this ties in directly with the work we're doing locally with, as you know, we're a regulated entity with the MS4 NIPIDs permit. And we've got some deadlines coming up at the end of the month, and Wayne's been working very hard to make sure we're going to comply with that. But part of what we do at the local level is to pass some of that burden along to the developer. If they're disturbing more than an acre, there's now new requirements on on-site recharge of the stormwater, and a lot of the stormwater management that is imposed as conditions of permit is part of that decentralized strategy of basically everyone trying to do their part. So it's just each site in itself isn't maybe that big a contributor, but in the aggregate, that's been part of the problem.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anything new?
That was it, thank you.
That's great. I mean, information is power, and people at least can, I mean, we can't necessarily stop everything, but at least we can know what's happening.
What about the needles?
Well, that's under litter in this EPA website, yes, that's part of it.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Glenn, you're gonna stand up there with a net and get,
I
yeah,
pick them up off of the
yeah.
mound while I'm walking my dogs.
Just a quick shout out to Angus and a thank you for his work with us as we've been doing the state budget. We've been working to secure some funding for handicapped accessibility.
Oh, that's
for the
right.
town. We had identified a particular project. Angus notified us that that project may not need the funding that we had identified, so we very quickly shifted gears, and we're trying to preserve the opportunity to give the town some funds still through that earmark, and it's looking very positive in the budget. And then lastly, in the Senate, we did have some progress. I know the House looked at this as well, to try to increase the amount of funding for regional school transportation. And that's an important thing that has never, in recent memory, been funded at the 100%
No, it
that
hasn't.
we've committed to.
You promised us if we regionalized, you were going to give us all that money.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there for that conversation,
Well, I'm gonna
Glenn,
blame you
but we are working on moving that number up, and we could come back at another time and talk a lot more about educational funding, and we should, because this is a year when we're going to see significant movement on that, probably by the end of July. But we can save that for another conversation because it's a much longer topic to discuss. But
Well, that would be a great conversation, so when you're ready to come in, why don't you get
Yeah.
in touch with Angus, because I would love to be able to talk about that.
let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Nice to see you, Senator. Nice to see you. Good to see you multitasking up there.
Thank you. Big mitts and you clean open.
Our next item on the agenda is a request to place signs on public property, the West Newbury Youth League flag football.
Okay, this looks to me to be a very routine request, but under the town policy, it requires a board vote, so.
Make a motion to approve?
Second
Discussion. I have a problem with several months of, the whole idea of not too many signs in town is we've been trying to cut them down, and we're trying to not be favorable to one group over another. Everyone wants to put signs out. All the way through the end of August seems excessive to this particular selectman.
June to mid-August.
So this says mid-August.
Just before school starts.
Yeah, but
Okay.
June, so it would be mid-June, obviously. because we're already kinda
Mid-June,
at-
mid-August.
So just say we'll have it a month. We prefer a month. I don't know. After a while, 2 months is too much because
Yeah.
if you drive by it, you see it, you go, oh, I gotta do that. But then it
Okay.
becomes like a tree. You know what I mean? You just drive by it every day and you don't even recognize it anymore. I would think a month would be adequate.
I feel a month is adequate.
Okay, so beginning when?
Mid, you know what? You know when we should do it?
Well,
Let's do it. Hold on. Let's do it.
Mid-July to
After whatever the Monday is after our field day in July, so we don't have a bunch of signs all around town during our bicentennial.
good call.
So the field day is on a Saturday, so the 14th, 15th. July 15th to the start of
So instead of mid-June to mid-August, mid-July to mid-August?
Sounds good.
Good. All in favor?
Well, hold on.
Oh, we could
but-
change the motion, yeah.
But no, but not mid. I want a definition of mid. July being
July 15th, July
to
15th,
mid-August.
July 15th to
mid-August.
August 15th.
Or to
So
mid-August.
July 15th is what, a Monday?
Yep.
I think, because the 11th.
I would say no sooner than July 15th to mid-August.
Okay, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a discussion of some resident concerns about traffic on Chase Street. The police department has been studying that for actually a couple of months. Chief, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. We received a number of complaints from residents on Chase Street about speeding vehicles as well as other issues like littering at the beginning of April. So starting on April 8th and continuing through until June 4th, we had directed patrols out in the area, running radar on Chase Street for many hours. Chase Street is not thickly settled. It's not posted with a speed limit. So on not thickly settled area, it's 40 miles an hour. So during the time we were out there.
Unless it's posted.
Correct. We didn't stop any cars for speeding over that time period. I was out there speaking with the residents last week. It is a narrow road, and my personal feeling that 40 miles an hour is too fast for that road. But there's a process that has to be gone through to get the speed limit lowered.
Okay. You would recommend that we start that process, is that what you're saying?
Sure. I believe Wayne, the DPW, has already been making contact with the state to do a speed study.
Yeah, I can summarize that. So we were, last week, Wayne and I were in touch with Paul Stedman at DOT. He got back to us today and has put the staff there in touch with Wayne, so we know exactly what we need to follow. In a nutshell, from Wayne's prior experience, it looks like the state they'll review the study that we did, and they'll probably do some amount of their own analysis. And they do need to authorize the posting of signs. We think where this is posting signs for the first time rather than posting a reduced speed, we kind of think it will go pretty quickly. So we have initiated that process. Wayne agreed with the chief's recommendation that 30 mile per hour was the right speed to post out there. So we've got that process in motion.
Why would the new increased home rule ability of cities and towns, why doesn't this fall under that? In other words, why do we have to seek permission from the state?
I was very surprised that we did, because in Maine, a local road was a local road, but I'm advised that we do, and so we're.
And that doesn't apply? They gave us some latitude on thickly settled areas that we could, if they were thickly settled, we could bring it down to 25, correct? As a generic thing?
It's thickly settled as per
That's
the
not thick.
definition.
It has to be thickly
Certain
settled. The
length,
state gave us the
certain-
ability, if you go into Newburyport, they have them posted before you go in on every road.
But this doesn't qualify, okay.
So, I know there's a definition for thickly settled, and most of Chase Street is very thinly settled.
Yeah.
But, right off of Main Street, for the first few hundred yards, that's where the concentration of homes is. And that segment, would that be considered thickly settled there? No?
According to
Okay.
Wayne, it needs an eighth of a mile with X number of houses,
Okay,
and it's not that long.
it's not, okay.
So that's one of the issues.
Okay. Was there any feedback? I was looking at the, you had supplied, or Angus had supplied us a packet that included the reports on the times that you were running radar on the street.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that was being done on the street, but I also was wondering, it seemed like they were focused on early in the day and then 7, 8 o'clock.
That's when the complaints were
was
early.
it? Oh, okay, so
The
that's
morning
when-
drive
okay,
and the afternoon
okay.
drive, and the officers sat in different areas, sometimes down by the cemetery,
Yep,
and other times in different locations.
okay,
And like I said, and they're having a marked cruiser there itself is gonna slow cars down, so you might not be getting a true reading of the speeds on that street
right,
Bless you.
from the police information.
yeah.
I can't imagine two people going 40 miles an hour, passing each other, you know what I mean, on opposite directions.
It is pretty narrow.
So,
So,
what's the, so where do we go from here? Yeah.
Well, we're gonna maintain patrols in the area. Having it posted would help the department out for enforcement. There wouldn't be any question of what the speed limit is. If people aren't familiar with thickly settled, unthickly settled, some of the drivers. So I think if we can get the study done and get it posted at a lower speed, so the officers are gonna be down there still patrolling the area.
So I'm guessing that the perception of vehicles going too fast is primarily within the first few hundred yards from, or the first eighth of a mile or so from Main Street.
Well, we have complaints down the other end
Oh,
too.
you do, okay,
recently.
because there are a couple of houses, one or two houses down at the other end, but
Beyond the cemetery,
beyond
yeah,
the cemetery,
yeah.
right.
And I'm sure you do get cars going through a lot faster than they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like any street. But
Yeah.
we didn't come across that during the time we were
Yeah,
out.
it was kind of remarkable, the fastest car you logged the whole time was going 40 miles an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
So, increased patrols, any way to get that portable, you're going too fast sign down there a couple of
That's,
times?
I think, all done.
Is
It's
it-
all corroded out.
Uh-huh.
Officer Dwyer tried to get it up and going, but
Is the dummy still around? You can park a car down there at the cemetery with that dummy in it? Take me one.
I'd
They
have to check if that's still
They
around.
used to do that years ago. They used to park cars around and they had this dummy with a hat on it. I walked over to it and it was a dummy. There was nobody in it. Try to trick people to slow people down. Okay. Anything else? What we can do? Any sign? What about signage from on our end? Like slow, whatever, children.
Children that play or get good
Anything like
comment,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could put other signs out. I don't think you can obviously post speed limits.
Not yet.
No, but what about some other kind of sign, yeah.
I mean, anything we could do to help out.
What about asking Wayne for a recommendation?
Yeah, I'll get a
Yeah.
recommendation from Wayne on that.
So it sounds like we're going in the right direction. That people are going 40.
Yeah.
We feel that's obviously too fast for that street, and we're proceeding now to try to get that down to 30 with the state.
Correct.
Okay? So.
I'm here, I'm the only one representing right now.
I could tell.
Because everyone's rushing, doing 5,000 things at once. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something, so that's great. We had talked a little bit about.
You have to use the microphone and just
I don't know.
If you could just say your name
tell
for
us
the,
your name and,
I knew you wanted to speak,
yeah,
so I was
yeah,
just
No,
yeah.
I didn't have to. My name is Lisa Meduzia. I live at 1 Chase Street on the corner of Chase and Main. I'm pretty amazed that Chase Street speed limit is the same as Main Street speed limit, which seems a little nutty.
Well, no, there's parts of Main Street that are lower.
Yeah, I
You
know.
go through, up near the food mart, it's 35, but if you go near the churches, it's 30.
Yes.
So, no,
it's
it's not.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah,
and it is a narrow
it's,
road.
It's actually, I think, isn't it 35 the whole way?
It changes all down.
No.
15,
Okay, yeah,
50
yeah.
on one end to
Okay, yeah, it's 50 in Newbury.
Yes, so that's great. We're happy. We're happy that police officers were out and, patrolling and checking speed limits. Another idea we had was actually putting in, if there's anything we can do on the road. We didn't know if you could do anything on the road, if that would be allowed. Like a crosswalk, there are some towns that have put in 3D crosswalks, which are quite interesting to look at. Because
But they're flat.
it looks like there's something up higher, and I think
Right.
people kind of go, whoa, kind of thing. But I don't know if that's something that is possible or something we can look into or think about in the future.
Are there any crosswalks on there? There's not.
No,
there
there's
wouldn't
nothing
be.
on the written on. Yeah, we didn't know if that was something that would, like stripes that looks like a speed bump, but it's not really a speed bump. Something like that might help deter some people or slow them down. Because even coming off of Main Street, I mentioned this last meeting, they will, coming from town onto Chase Street, they take the turn so fast. And I mean, I've had, like I said, people drive on our lawn going around.
When you say
so-
coming from town, coming from,
Center of West
Oh,
Newbury.
West
Sorry,
Newbury,
yeah, even coming
Downhill.
that way. And then we get a lot of turnarounds coming from Newburyport.
Yeah.
I think they must think they realize they're going the wrong way. Maybe they want to go to Newburyport. We get tons of people turning around in our driveways. So we put the cars in a certain way. Cars, they go to the next driveway. It's kind of we kind of laugh a little bit about it because you put the cones in and then they go to the next one. It's kind
Should
of,
actually get a pool together, we put $1 in, and, you know, see which
yes, yeah.
driveway they turn around.
So it's just kind of funny. I don't know why that happens. So traffic.
But you, I mean, obviously, we're doing the best we possibly
Yeah,
can.
no, I
And you're
appreciate
happy
it
we're
very
gonna have
much.
President's Day, we're gonna change the sign. We'll have the DPW guy
Yeah.
direct, maybe we can have some other signs.
Yeah.
Putting a turtle crossing
Yeah.
sign, that always seems to slow people down.
Yep. Yeah, I know a lot about turtle crossings. We have them at work, so for real.
Well, I was actually just trying to be funny.
Yeah,
I really
for
I
real,
don't
we
think
do
we'll be
have
doing
them. No, I appreciate it very much.
Okay.
And I believe everybody that concentrated in there, that all the neighbors appreciate it as well. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Jeff.
So for the next meeting, I'm sure we'll have heard back from DOT. In fact, we were trading calls today on the.
Oh, you think it'll be
process.
fast?
Well, in terms of what's needed, my hope is that, I do know that they need a study submitted. My hope is that the 52-page document that the police department produced will count as a study, and that we can kind of push things along. So anyhow, I can give you more detail. Once I have something, I'll send an email out so you know what's going on.
Okay, next item is approval of the deed to transfer the Pipestay Apartments to the Housing Authority.
So this initiative actually goes back a couple of years. This is a land and building transfer that was authorized by town meeting on April 2017, and had been on the punch list to get over the finish line. And really, the main thing that had to happen was the building needed to be recited, and then just the legal work associated with drawing up the deed, getting the septic Title V inspection, the smoke detector certificate. I really want to highlight the siding, which I know I sent an email to the board over the weekend with some photos. I think the Buildings and Grounds crew did just a phenomenal job with that. It was not a simple project. They are not, professional siders, but you would never know it. I mean, they did an incredibly professional job. A lot of that work was done over the winter. It was really cold out there. So a number of departments really pulled together to make this happen. And so we've had a couple of site visits out there with Tracy, both kind of pre and post. And so I guess I'd invite Tracy Watson, the executive director, to opine. But she had told us right from the start, her board had actually voted some time ago to vote to accept the gift of the property once the siding was complete and that kind of thing. So.
I'd like to echo.
Oh, you got to press the button so the light turns green.
No, better. I'd like to echo Angus's sentiments. The authority in my board of commissioners couldn't be more grateful for the siding and the hard work that went into it, because we had conducted a capital needs assessment prior to town meeting and giving the board or right after, actually, we did for the state in order to make sure that we could continue on with it. One of the major things was the siding of the property. So bang up job, really good job. Residents are absolutely thrilled. The housing authority is thrilled to take possession of this property, and we hope that we can be good stewards of it as we have of the other properties.
So will the people go through the same kind of recertification process and
Yes,
stuff as housing authority property?
Yes, it's affordable, it's been deeded affordable in perpetuity. The current residents are actually, I think 3 out of the 4 are original residents, still there.
Oh, okay, that many, okay.
Yep, I think it's 3 out of 4.
Because it's probably been like 10 years now, right? Or
I think
probably,
a little bit longer,
yeah.
actually. I think a little bit longer. Before my
Long
time,
time,
obviously,
yeah.
but I do think a little bit longer.
We did this early on when I was just started.
We.
So what does this mean for us? So we relinquish all of those responsibilities and stuff, maintenance,
Except for plowing.
except
Except for plowing.
Yeah, just
We're
plowing, no shoveling. They're off
Nope.
street, so we're done of it.
We're saving about almost $3,000 annually on the insurance costs for the building.
Wow, okay.
Good.
Yep.
We have
So,
to take a formal vote?
Yes, and I don't know, Mike, do you want to elaborate on what you put in the deed? Mike did, you saw in the language in the deed, he did stipulate that in the event it ever was not housing, the ownership would revert to the town.
Right.
That's just,
Right.
but other than that, pretty straightforward. It obviously preserves for the town
To get through.
the easement to pass and repass on the paved area. Yep. So it seems to be a win-win.
it definitely seems to be a win-win. And it comes into the housing portfolio, the housing authority's portfolio, and while it is not covered by the state programs, it's, the property itself, as I said, remains affordable, will remain affordable.
What do you mean by that, doesn't?
It's not, well, Main Street is an elderly disabled, and then we have 705s, which is the scattered site.
Yep.
These are, so it's, what pipe stave is, it's deeded in perpetuity and must maintain its affordability, but it doesn't receive any subsidy, it's based on, the formula of what affordability is, what the residents'
Yeah.
income must be, and where their rent would fall.
So you get no subsidy, you don't get any subsidies?
No, that property will basically live off its rents.
Okay.
We get very minimal subsidy at the authority too. And as you know, we're in a management agreement through the Newburyport Housing Authority. Newburyport is also an unsubsidized authority.
So does this help us at all by having that put into it? So, okay. No.
I mean, it
It
stays
counts,
on your
it counts,
rolls.
it counts as
Well, I knew that.
towards our affordable
Does
numbers,
help us,
yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it does help us because it adds another program to West Newbury. And it also,
Potentially get more funding.
yes,
It doesn't have
yes.
to go to, that's what I was looking for.
Correct,
It doesn't have
yes.
to go specifically to that, but because you became a little bit bigger,
Right,
you get a little bit more stuff, which helps us too.
correct, right.
Okay,
Good. That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Good. So what?
okay, do we need a motion here?
Yeah, I believe the memo sets out, so the board, it's requested the board vote to approve the enclosed deed in order to transfer ownership of the property.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Thanks.
On behalf of my commissioners too.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
Thank
so we'll execute that transfer as of July 1 because our insurance is paid through the end of June, so we'll do it at, I think, at the stroke of midnight. is when we'll-
So if a tree, so hold on. So if something happens to that, that's not insurable, who pays for it until
No, it
July
is.
1st?
Our state insurance that covers the rest of it will be taking those 4 additional in the building on, actually with no cost to the authority until October 1st. So everybody's worked together on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, next item are intra-departmental line item transfers. I will list them, and we can vote on them all maybe at the same time. Fire Department, $10,000 transfer from fire alarm wages to fire expenses.
So moved. Let's just do it.
You want to do them one at a time? Okay.
Any discussion on everything? Is there anything we need to know about it? I didn't see anything.
I was okay with it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll second that. But wouldn't it be most efficient just to go all the way through like Carty was gonna do and then,
Just in case we had a discussion on one, I thought maybe
okay.
we'd want to do it individually, but why don't we do it your way?
Fire Department, $5,000 transfer from fire drills to fire expenses. And these are, all the expenses are for repairs to the ladder truck. And $5,000 from fire administration to fire expenses, and $5,000 from fire alarm and communications to fire expenses. So let's do all the fire ones, okay.
So I would make a motion to approve all the fire department transfers.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. DPW, $4,000 from street paving and repairs to DPW expenses, and DPW again, 5,000 from the streetlights line item to road machinery and operating expenses. Angus, I didn't quite see what was the particular reason for the DPW items? Just the fire department one was pretty self-explanatory, but I couldn't quite figure these ones out.
Right, and I have asked for future transfers that we get more like a memo that kind of spoon feeds what what I was given was this invoice that I included in here for about $8,300 for the unanticipated repairs to the brush bandit. That came to about $8,300, and that I'm told was kind of the big unbudgeted expense that came in that kind of pushed that line over.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, I'll second. I guess we have discussion.
Discussion on that?
Yeah, I was just curious on the second transfer, the $5,000 from the public streetlights. That account, how's that? I mean, it's an account we budgeted at town meeting. How?
I keep trying to cut that every year since I've been on the finance committee, since like 2000, and no one will listen to me.
I was curious about the amount of how we end up with what should be a fairly predictable account.
You're right, it should, and I think the town has been over budgeting for it for some time. In the FY20 budget that was recently voted, we did reduce that to reflect historical spending. We still included some cushion because we didn't want to cut it too fine.
It's getting darker these years than it used to, yeah.
Global warming.
But this is a good, not to always bring this up, but with a chart of accounts, in my old job, we had accounts. I could tell you like what electrical costs went to what. Here, it's not been as clean, and so we don't have like a disaggregated, expense of like what's driving the cost.
But we will.
But we will, because as we build the new chart of accounts,
forward.
right? Because we have all these different accounts that we have with National Grid, but they're all coded to the same expense line.
Right.
So to break it's not like you can't do it. It's just it's a couple of hours of someone's time to, and as you know, we got a lean finance staff, but we did cut the streetlight budget for FY20 to better in line with historical spending. But in the current year, it's no surprise to me whatsoever that it's over budgeted, because I think it has been for a number of years.
And some years I think that it gets, the National Grid sent all their invoices sort of like late, and the next year they sent them, estimated, and hard to keep it even.
Yeah, it's really no easier dealing with utility companies as a town than it is for a resident. So we're doing it on a larger scale.
It is true, because you think.
It really is, yeah. There's no we don't get there's no red phone we get to pick up.
I actually talked to a pretty high vice president at National Grid. I said, can't we get a combined bill on all our, and he looked at it for a while, and, no.
Okay. So it's been moved.
And seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that was for the two DPW interdepartmental transfers.
And those will go to Finance Committee, meets a week from tonight to take those up.
Next item is the approval of the amended Pentucket School District Regional Agreement.
Okay. The version that you have in your packet reflects all of the redlined amendments that were included in the FinCom booklet that was authorized by town meeting. And I did go through line by line and make sure that it is exactly what the board had previously seen and referred to town meeting back in February. And in fact, it's debatable whether a vote is even needed. In Groveland, they didn't take a vote because they felt the town meeting vote provided the authorization, but to err on the side of caution, we'll bring it to the board. So you're asked to vote to endorse the agreement in the form that's in front of you. I don't have the originals for you to sign tonight because those are in Merrimack. Groveland has signed, Merrimack is signing tonight. So I expect to receive the signed originals in the next day or so, at which point, assuming you vote tonight, I would just let you know and you could stop by and sign it at your convenience.
There's something else we need to sign before our next meeting too, so if you can get them both at the same time,
Yep.
then we come in,
Good.
notify us.
Yeah, we should have the other one in the next day or so too.
Is there anything in this new edition that if we want to get out of the regionals agreement because we don't like the new high school?
There's no such thing.
Awesome. So, make a motion to, what's the motion need to be? Make a motion to.
Approve the signature of the regional agreement.
Yeah, changes to the regional agreement.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There was one thing in there, and I'm not going to mention it. Nope. I didn't want to, no.
I think it has to do with that whether that dollar lease goes from here to there or there to here.
Oh, you mean words that aren't?
It was unrelated to the changes that were voted
That
on.
the grandma that keeps you up at night? Is that what you're?
Well, it just said that, okay, I can't help it, so that, it talks about the lease from the district to the towns, rather than the towns. In the elementary schools, it's talking about the lease from the district to the towns, which didn't make any sense to me, but we're not hearing this.
The way I read it is in section 4C, so it does talk about.
No, let's not talk about it.
Okay, all right.
He feels better. He got it out. He'll sleep tonight. Move on. You got people here.
Yep.
To a point.
Angus brought up to us that perhaps we should review the charge of the car post that maybe now with the Drake's Landing going on beside that, we need somebody to be able to look out for the town's interest with promised actions by the developer of Drake's Landing to changes that are going to be made to around the grounds of the car post, and we need somebody to be able to look out for the town's interests on a day-to-day basis for that, as well as think about the long-term interests of preserving the building. So I think it's a worthwhile topic. So Angus, do you want to give us a little bit of background?
Sure, yeah, I think, part of this is because obviously I'm not that new anymore, but, I'm still pretty new, and our DPW director's pretty new. And so I've tried to be very deferential to the committee process throughout my work here. And so knowing there's a car post building committee, I've been a little hesitant to do anything without running it through Bob or the committee. And as time has gone by, and I think we've all gotten to know each other better, I think that we would benefit from a clear division of labor. So things like, basic management functions of the building, and, to Archie's point, and I can elaborate on this in terms of the work to be completed by the Drake's Landing developer as agreed between the developer and the board. That's not really the committee's, I shouldn't feel hamstrung to go through the committee. I don't think they want me to. And I think I've been maybe a little conservative with regard to this building because I haven't been totally clear on what's the scope of the committee. So I've kind of assumed anything to do with a car post, I want to run through the committee. Well, the committee doesn't meet all that often, and so for some of these practical day-to-day things, I think it would be helpful to clarify either my role or really the DPW director's role and his responsibility overseeing buildings and grounds of the town generally, and then to more clearly delineate the committee's charge with regard to, looking at the building for, potential future public investment to bring it back into productive use. So I will say, just to illustrate, there are 3 fairly present decision points, all of which, in my opinion, rest with the Board of Selectmen as the chief elected board of the town. And I'm not looking for answers tonight, but just to give you an example of a couple of things. So one of the terms of the agreement with the developer was that they would put in the parking, and part of that would include removing the parking from the paved area from the front, because they've got to get rid of the curb cuts. Well, there's a really good suggestion that came in from a resident that we might want, if we have all that front area torn up, a year from now, we might wish we hadn't, because if we have workers there to do the roof or to work on the building envelope, they might like to have a nice asphalt pad to put their truck on. Good idea. That's the kind of thing that, we ought to make that decision. Another is related to drainage and getting water out of the basement. There's some issues with that, and there's a solution that's going to need to be come up with in terms of where does the sump pump the water to. That's not something that's really been thought through, and once the paving's in for the lot, that could get worse. So that's just really a building management issue. A third one, which I think is a bigger kind of a question maybe with policy implications, is to do with potential future use of the building and how to handle septic for that. There's been, I know, and I don't want to assume too much, but my assumption has been that the board, in its agreement with the developer, has set the table for a potential future leaching field on the adjacent property. The town accepted an easement that preserves access to that adjacent property. I don't want to assume that means the board's made the decision that a future leaching field is necessary. We haven't had that conversation yet, but some of the discussions that have happened in recent months suggest that maybe a tight tank would be a better strategy for dealing with septic for the future use of that building. So that's the kind of thing that, in my conception of this clear division of labor, I would think that would be a conversation I would be having with the Board of Selectmen. In public meeting, welcoming any input, but it's really, I think that's a selectman type discussion because you represent the town as owners of the property.
So if I'm reading between the lines, so you're thinking about like understanding the committee and the knowledge that they have is very important, but it's a little bit cumbersome to get things done. Maybe having those people as more like advisors to you, and so you're doing more of the day-to-day work and so forth and so on what needs to happen there and managing that, and then bringing that back to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I think
Or should we?
I was also thinking too that we don't need to be putting more responsibilities on Angus as the DPW director handles the other buildings in terms of like, do we need a new power connection to a building or whatnot? That seems like something that he should handle.
Yeah, but Angus would have the overall authority, and he would delegate to whom he thinks responsibility, rather than going through a committee, coming through the board, to the Board of Selectmen, and so forth and so on. It just seems like a more cumbersome way. But still,
I guess, part of it is, again, getting back to me being kind of conservative and deferential to committees. Let's say, a question came up about how best to handle drainage, and do we put in a swale or do we put in a, some kind of catch basin with, or whatever. I now feel I could just bring that question to you. 4 or 5 months ago, I would have said, well, geez, if I bring it out to the board's going to say, well, what does the committee think? And I'm going to say, okay, well, I got to go to the committee and then come to you. That was my mindset.
Yeah.
I don't think I was correct, maybe, but I think it's been helpful these last several months just to kind of better think through, and as some of these very specific issues have started to come to the fore. So that's really what I'm looking to.
authorize, you want us to take a vote?
Well, there's 2 things I'm looking for that I set out in the memo. One is to better clarify that my office is this board's kind of implementation arm for the policy you've already set with regard to the agreement with the developer. So, you know, in
Like
terms
with
of
the
seeing.
parking, for example. We
Yeah,
already
seeing
established
through-
where we want it and everything, yeah.
Doing, just, you understand the concept behind it, you just wanna make, then you implement it and do the right thing for the town.
Yeah, and
Because we didn't have
bring,
a lot of, quite honestly, we didn't have a lot of forethought in the sense of, I understand the developer needs to get rid of that curb, right? But we just said, yeah, okay, give us a beautiful grassy area there and stuff. But then that beautiful if we're gonna do any work, that beautiful grassy area is gonna be torn up.
It's gonna be wrecked, yeah.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
So why not put something in escrow by the developer?
Yes.
And then keep that nice, flat, hard surface as a staging area.
Right.
To be able to better fix the building, and then after it's done, use the escrow money to do what we want to do in the beginning.
That's exactly right. So yeah, I think, you know, I would, any kind of decision points I would bring to the board, but basically I'd be your implementation arm for that and for other more routine building and property maintenance issues. And then to define a scope for the committee that's more, well, and I don't want to tell you what it should be, but something that's more toward facilitating a public process to get public involvement, so that as a, proposal is eventually brought forward to the voters for further investment in the building, that's done with a lot of meaningful public input. But
That's the charge portion you're talking about.
Right.
Their charge.
Right. But one thing that I think is, and I'm glad Bob's here tonight, because I think he and I see this the same way. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Bob, but he explained to me that when the committee was first set up, he thought that there was some expectation the committee was going to be recommending to the board the future use. And I think, Bob, you felt that that wasn't really the committee's call. That's ultimately up to the voters. So I think that, it seems like that's created a little bit of a impediment to move forward, because there's been a focus on what's the use going to be. And I think I've come to the point where I feel like that's, well, it's not irrelevant. It's not, in my view, the top issue, because I think the community could make the decision to invest in this building because it values the building, it values the history, it values what it represents, understanding that the decision about use will be a continuing one and may change over the life of the building. If the building's with us for another 50 or 100 years, the use could change multiple times. So it might not be that important in this initial stage to determine what the use will be. I think if you're restoring it, you want to know what use you want to accommodate, whether that's meeting space or assembly space or that kind of thing, so you're restoring it to the right level. But I feel like that discussion of what's it going to be has maybe cost some time over the last, not just in my tenure, but maybe over the last couple of years. That's been kind of because no one really knows, and also I think the committee doesn't feel it's their place to say that, and this board may not even feel that it's your place to say that.
One thing I think that we're sort of, the clock is ticking. We tried to, the money we spent before was to stabilize it, I believe, for 5 years, and we haven't got to 5 years yet, but the clock has been ticking out on that, so I don't know how much the things we did already to stabilize the building, how much more time we have before we have to do something else, or it's gonna deteriorate further. I think that it would be valuable to continue to get a survey for the fall town meeting for the voters to approve to spend money on a further survey, architectural survey, to what we really need to make it first stop it from deteriorating further, and to start say at least working on the outside of the building to stabilize it. And everyone has different ideas. I'd like to envision that we could do it in over, say, the course of 10 years, that every year we make some appropriation to the building and fix one aspect of it. Otherwise I think it would be a very big project, but maybe the town would handle it if we could, and whether the survey could factor in, can we do things in a piecemeal basis rather than fixing everything all at once? So that's what I'd like to do.
Okay, so do we need to vote on that charge?
Well, yeah, what I'd like to do is get some guidance tonight, and then I could write something down based on what I think I hear, and bring it back at the next meeting that you could vote.
Well, it sounds like what you're suggesting is the best way of trying to get something done without, you know what I mean, but but leaving the committee in place for their own particular charge, but just kind of get things moving.
Mm-hmm.
In a kind of an efficient way. And
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Archie said. You know, I think we need to get a proposal to the voters in the fall for some additional soft cost type work with the goal of bringing a proposal, in my opinion, next April. I think it should be the target to bring a proposal to invest in the actual physical facility. I think, you know, that's...
I would agree with everything you said. As long as we don't want to, I personally, I'm listening, and the committee's not. I think the committee's in play with it, right? Sounds good to me.
Well, yeah, and your suggestion that, you know, you basically be the select board's means of implementation, as opposed to, I think what you meant the alternative was that the board of selectmen is involved in every decision. That doesn't seem, and every, you know, every small change, every small decision made to get something implemented, that's clearly not.
Right, and some of that I think is because it's not just me being new, but then Wayne being new, but also just the number of things we're dealing with, and this is a building that a lot of people care about a great deal. There's a lot of opinions about it, so I've been a little more cautious about doing anything. You know, partly because you know, with the committee and not wanting to do things out of sequence.
Yeah.
So I think kind of carving out some of these things that don't deal with the future, you know, the bigger picture, but more just the responsible current operations of the building, like stormwater and you know, how we actually execute some of these things that were agreed to with the developer. You know, do we phase certain things? Do we have them, you know, not pave and hold the money in escrow? Those kinds of day-to-day things are really this board's purview and mine on your behalf.
I think sounds reasonable.
Right.
I'm in agreement.
So I mean, one question I have a site, you know, last fall, Selectman Anderson was pressing to get easement recorded on or to move forward with the easement on the abutting property. Sitting here today, I don't know if I feel like that's a little premature, because I don't think we're there yet in terms of knowing whether a leaching field on the adjacent property is part of the long-term vision. And I included in here just the cover, the first 2 pages of Paul Savigny's report. There's a lot of backup behind that, which is just soil testing, which you're welcome to have. I didn't know how much it meant, but in a nutshell, what he's saying is that for reasonably anticipated or potential uses, a tight tank is probably going to be your better bet. So do we?
Reasonable.
And yeah, from a whole, yeah, from maintenance, from cost, and so I don't want to go too far down the road of spending time toward potentially drawing up survey plans or having Mike drawing up easements to convey from the abutter to the town until we kind of get to the point where we say that's even something we want, because it might not be something we want. I think it's great that the board preserved that option with the easement that you recorded, but in terms of the next steps, I don't know, do I go and spend, you know, go do a site visit, do all the things I would do toward getting an easement? I think first we ought to have a conversation. Is that the future septic strategy, or is it a tight tank?
I don't think anyone.
I don't think we're qualified to make that decision, no.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that all we're doing is just trying to preserve as much as we possibly can because we didn't know.
Right.
Now this is the time for you to tell us what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's.
Or maybe the survey tells us what,
whomever,
yeah.
But it's time to maybe like recalibrate everything. We kind of try to, just because we got the easement didn't mean we wanted to use it. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the opportunity.
Right, right.
That's above our pay grade, or
Yeah.
under it if it's in the ground.
So in these materials that are in your packet, I did send around, I think it was just on Saturday that they got to the Car Post Committee, so they probably haven't fully digested them, but I think I want to thank Paul for the work he did on this report, because he and I met about 2 weeks ago, and I asked him to kind of look at it, and I think he came forward with something very useful.
Good. Does that give you the direction that you need?
Did we?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I
with
don't
the
know.
members here, I would personally be interested in their thoughts on, how they feel, they can best support the town's efforts and to draw up a charge. Because, for example, if the goal is to get a proposal to next spring's town meeting and backing up something to the fall for the soft costs, I think the more clarity the committee has on where you're looking for them to get, I think is going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Rather than having 4 meetings about what's the building gonna be.
I agree. You don't mind? I don't know if this is on.
You have to press that.
Hit
little
the
push
button.
until the green comes on. Okay, that'll go.
There we go.
There you go, Bob. Catch my question.
We're live. First of all, I have to agree with Archie. I think the first thing we need to do is, whether it's an architectural survey or a construction survey, we need to have the professionals come in, take a look at that building, and tell us what our next step is going to be. I see 3 serious issues. One is the tort. You could wave at somebody through the walls. There's no mortar holding it together. And if we don't fix that pretty soon, it's going to cave in. The other one, the roof needs to be redone. Not the complete roof, but there are pieces and parts of it that need to be done. And the chimney out back is beginning to fall in. A couple of other things that I think, if we're going to do anything at all with that building, as far as, not modernize it, but restoring it, it needs to be done by professionals. Not me with a paintbrush or somebody else. We need somebody in there that knows what they're doing. Or you're going to be putting good money after bad. I mean, it's going to cost you some money to hire a good qualified mason to do the brickwork. But you want somebody that knows what they're doing and has done it, and not some guy that's going to come in and say, yeah, I can do that with a bag of cement. The windows.
Kind of implied, though? You're making me nervous.
It's,
I would assume that. I would assume that.
well,
would be implied.
I'm simply hoping that, if the town and everybody decides to actually repair the building, it's
We
done
want someone with preservation
with
knowledge.
preservation knowledge.
Okay,
Yeah.
just not somebody. who
Not
sits
just
below.
somebody with a paintbrush and a couple of chip saws and
Okay.
says, I can fix it. We need somebody that knows what they're doing,
Okay.
But
I
I think the other thing that, at least me, and I think probably the other members of the board would kind of like to hear from you gentlemen, is what do you want our scope to be? My understanding was, when you first appointed us to the committee, it was more or less to find a use for the building, without doing too much about preserving it or anything else, but come up with a use for the building.
I think it's a chicken or egg kind of thing. Like, some people would say, well, if we don't have a use, how can we fix it? Versus, and I think maybe now we're thinking the egg comes first, and maybe we do some fixing first before we come up with any use.
I think that's what we're here too. I think we're gonna come
Right.
up with a charge from Angus in our next meeting. He's gonna have something, so then you guys know exactly what's going
Yeah.
on, rather than just speculate.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Thank you, Bob. Did you feel comfortable now?
Yeah, and once I have and I started to put something together, I just didn't get it far enough but once I have a draft, I'll send it to you guys as well. Because ideally, before it gets to this board, I'd love to have the input of the committee members.
All right, our next item is FY 20 that sounds like a way in the future. Committee appointments. FY 20, doesn't that sound that crazy? Yeah.
That would be fine, I don't think Jetson's on
So, why don't we,
When the selectmen stuff?
get the selectmen things right out of,
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that?
absolutely.
Well, there's some brief discussion earlier, about, Rick wanted to maybe be on the building school committee and the community preservation.
Actually, I'm fine with what you had suggested, Glenn. Thought.
Perfect, I'm happy with that too. Perfect, excellent. Okay, now, 'cause I was just gonna advocate that I really still wanna be on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would, well,
Can I
okay,
ask another question, Mr. Chairman?
okay.
Did we say we don't need the stormwater regulation person as a representative? I thought we said that last time, or I could be mistaken.
That
no,
is
we
my
said we didn't.
recommendation.
Huh?
That was my recommendation, is that we
do
not
not need
reappoint.
somebody. Okay, perfect.
You're out of the sewer, Glenn.
Perfect. So, investment policy, you still wanna be on, Dave?
Yeah, I want to do that.
So did you wanna be on capital improvements too, Rick, or do you want me to do that?
No, I would be good with capital improvements and CPC if nobody else can stand up for CPC.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I
Make the
would,
motion that, Rick be the capital improvements committee representative from the selectmen, the community preservation committee from the selectmen, and Dave Archibald be the investment policy committee.
no, do them separately so that I can second you.
Oh, no, that's true. Okay, so the first two then.
So the first two, I would second Mr. Parker for capital improvements and CPC. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion that Dave Archibald be the investment policy committee representative from the board of selectmen. Did you want to do that?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
And I'll make a motion that Glenn will be the Pentucket School Building Committee representative.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Okay.
How do you want to do this?
So we have people, a couple folks from the Concom, so it would make sense to use her here. And Wendy, I'm not sure what other committee or Judy, what other committees are you on? I mean, it makes sense to take care of people that are here right now.
Capital improvements committee.
But that's not us, that's your voted, you're not you're not.
That's, you're a rep
Yeah.
of a other community.
No, capital improvements, I'm sorry, I thought you said CPA.
No, that's from conservation.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry,
All right, so,
hold on for 1 second, let's, Isn't that out of order?
No, they're in
what's your
the,
question, Glenn?
they're in the order of the spreadsheet we inherited.
Thank
So
you.
there's
Okay,
no
so
particular
I'm not-
order.
Okay, good, thank you. I'm looking for alphabetical stuff and it's not happening. So perfect.
So,
Within each committee, it's sorted kind of newest to oldest in terms of appointments within each committee, but the order of the committees is totally arbitrary.
well,
Well, I'm trying to figure, Rick had a good, oh, here it is, conservation's on the last page.
it's the very last page, yeah.
You got a
So,
good point, let's, why don't we,
yeah,
people here, and I just couldn't find it.
So capital improvements is on the third page. Where's Concom?
at the end.
Okay.
So the only two people that are up for appointment this year would be Wendy and Judy.
Right.
I make a motion that we appoint Wendy Reed and Judy Meisner to the Conservation Committee, term ending 6/15/2022.
I second that.
Discussion?
Hold on for 1 second, I'm sorry, discussion. I was the one who suggested more people come in or anything, so they would be in the packet if we had anybody else, more interested in any, right?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that.
As per Angus's detailed analysis of the how the Concom was appointed by
I just paraphrased Mike on that.
Mass General Law, oh, okay, towns with a town manager, the Conservation Commission is appointed by the town manager and confirmed by the Board of Selectmen.
So why are we doing that?
Well, we're confirming it.
Well, so in, I think in my memo, that's exactly what I'm,
So should we revise the motion to say we're confirming the town manager's nomination?
I would take that friendly amendment.
yes, in that case, I would nominate Wendy Reed and Judy Meisner for continued service.
So I would move that we.
Well, you wouldn't recommend, you'd appoint them, and then we would reaffirm your appointment.
Good.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Boy, that was complicated.
It was. Almost getting a little.
Who's on first?
I did ask Mike, and to his knowledge, that was the only appointed committee that was formerly of the board that is now somewhat different. Not staff, but in terms of committee appointments. Yeah.
And then, okay, one thing so now, let's recommend, Mr. Chairman, instead of move on to
The
CIC.
capital improvements, okay, so,
We have three people that are, Mr. Chairman, that are up, one being,
Judy, it looks like your membership on that is not,
2021.
is not expired.
All right, then the other one will be the personnel committee. I don't know when that expires.
Those are just one-year appointments, although actually, they were made as one-year appointments, so that would need to be renewed, but also under the personnel bylaw, interestingly, it actually gives the board very broad latitude, both in terms of the number of members and the term. So 1 year is how it has been done. But actually, you'll recall last fall, you had appointed a fourth member, which is fully within your authority to do under the bylaw.
So the spreadsheet says requested reappointment is to 2022.
On the personnel?
Personnel advisory.
Where's that one, Rick?
Oh, you're right, it does.
You don't have to be on the hot seat on that one either, Judy. I don't think you're on the hot seat on that one either.
Is that a typo or is that correct?
Well, in a sense, it is a typo because it's a subjective thing. So that it could be, you could appoint for 3 years or you could appoint for 1 year. So yeah, I would.
We gotta get these things off.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, here
whole-
it is, okay.
The whole format of this is
right
right
above
Whittier.
Whittier,
Right.
right below.
Okay, so yeah, so it's a typo, it's thinking that we're gonna do it for 3 years, but she's up. No, you're up. So I would say, do you wanna make it? What do you wanna do?
Is there any reason not to do it for 3 years?
In my observation, Mike, you may have better insight on this, but it seems to me that the 3-year appointments, or in some cases 5, tend to be where the bylaw or the enabling legislation states that. And in the others, for instance, Energy Committee, Bicentennial Committee, where it doesn't say anything, those have tended to be 1-year appointments. Is that a fair characterization? Okay. So I think in that case, since the bylaw doesn't prescribe length of appointment, I would suggest 1 year is probably how it's been done.
So I'd make a motion that we, appoint, Judy Meisner and Catherine Conrad to the Personnel Advisory Committee, term ending 6/15/20.
20.
Okay.
Okay, and then.
Well, I need a second on that.
Oh, second, I'm sorry.
I was getting nervous, guys.
Further-
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Sorry, moving
I
on to
thought
the
that was
next,
gonna be
I was
easy.
moving on to the next committee. I was searching for, trying to not have you hanging around. I second that.
Further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, my word.
So, I see, Wendy, you're also on the OSC as an alternate, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, but, alternate 2019, so So should we,
Where are we, I'm sorry, Rick?
that was OSC, I'm just trying to take care of committees that.
No, I agree, but I just because this
Junior
is.
Wendy are on.
So, toward the bottom of the third page is the Open Space Committee.
Third
Don't
page.
necessarily want to share all the agony sitting here.
Pages aren't numbered. Pages aren't numbered.
Energy.
It's the bottom of the page that has capital improvements at the top.
Oh, I got it, okay.
The second from the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
So, so there we have everybody, well, no, not everybody. We have Patricia Reeser, Don Borkard, John Dodge, Wendy Reed, and Dan Carlo. Requested not reappointment, okay.
So, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? So, if there's no date there, like John Dodge, there's just that line.
That's because as of when I put this together, I hadn't heard from John. I emailed him over the weekend, and both he and Don Borkard both got back to me over the weekend that they very much are interested in reappointment.
They are.
They
Yes?
are. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'd make a motion that Patricia Reeser, Don Bocard, John Dodge,
And Wendy Reed.
well, Wendy Reed's an alternate. Do
So
you want,
that-
do you not want to be an alternate anymore? Well, no, we don't have so many people, so I make a motion that they, on the Open Space Committee, their term ending 6/15/22.
6/15/20,
2022.
that's correct.
Okay, I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So then I make a motion that Wendy Reed be the open space alternate, and her.
And those are one-year terms.
Yeah, and ending 6/15/20.
You second that,
I'd
Rick?
second that, yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we need another person there, that's not done, we need another alternate, because the person, is not, requested not to be.
And the OSC has to have two alternates, is that right?
No,
Okay.
It can, yeah.
but if somebody wants to, that'd be a good way to kind of mold them into the.
And, I don't,
Before we go on,
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. So Ryan Goodwin to Personnel Advisory, was he part of your motion? He would be a new member.
did we miss that?
I may have missed it and taken notes.
Did he, yeah, I would make a motion to.
He requested appointment. He's not a member now, so I think the
I
motion was
understand.
just Judy and
Make an appointment
Catherine.
that Ryan Goodwin be on the Personnel Advisory Committee and term ending 6/15/22.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
So I'm gonna, okay, Personnel Advisory Committee's gone. Okay.
Okay, so now can we start at the beginning of the page so that we don't have to jump around? I don't know, start at, there's one that, there's,
Hold on for 1 second, so this back page.
okay, I'm starting with the page,
Concom is done, so that back page is.
okay. The page that starts with Board of Fire Engineers at the top.
But we've already appointed them.
I know, but
Right.
that's the only way I can tell
Yeah,
the
no.
pages apart.
That's perfect. So that one's done.
So the ones that are before you are anything in the far right column.
Right.
Everything else is just informational.
So, okay, next one that is empty is FinCom.
Make a motion that Gary Roberts and Nathan Kelly be appointed to FinCom, their terms ending 6/15/22.
I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye. So FinCom.
Next we have, Registers of Voters.
This I don't understand, because we have Margaret Dushman that says her term expired in 2018, but there's nothing else around that. What does that mean? That's new to me.
So,
That was last
so
year.
I think she was reappointed.
Last year?
Yeah.
Okay, but she's on here and it doesn't say, okay, perfect. And then, so the only one we wanna do is,
Rosamond.
Michael McCarron is ex officio and Rosamund is better.
So, Posey Yater is up this year.
Yeah,
But Elise Hendricks is resigning, so we have a one-year term that's open.
Okay. So you got one
Why don't
nomination.
we just do veteran right now?
Yeah.
Make a motion that appointed to register of voters, term expiring 6/15/22.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now we have one there, we have one left there.
Okay, next one is
Zoning-
zoning board of appeals, associate members. Okay, so we've got one person whose term is going up.
And that's actually a full member. Right now, they don't have an alternate, so this would be a
Oh,
full
okay.
5-year term, and Judy Gregg has expressed interest in reappointment.
Okay.
Make a motion to appoint Ruth Gregg to the zoning board of appeals, term ending 6/15.
2024.
2024.
Thank you, obviously easier for you to submit. Okay?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that one is done, but we do need one alternate. for parcel.
Okay, next one is the harbor committee. We have 2 reappointments and 1 new person
Make an appointment that we appoint,
for a 3-year term.
yep, Tom Squidwin, Harbor Committee and Assistant Harbor Master, Terrence Hartford, Harbor Committee, and Steve Boyd is on the Harbor Committee, terms ending 6/15/22.
Back up. For discussion. So the harbor regulations provide for a 3-member harbor committee. I know that in the past, before I was here, that, and I believe it was Steve, who was appointed as an alternate member. The regulations don't specify that. Personally, I think that's fully within the appointing authority's purview to do that. But the regulations do provide for a 3-member committee, not 4. So I think if your interest is to appoint 4, I would suggest that 1 be an associate member, alternate member.
So we'll make that Steve Boyd as the associate member alternate.
Okay, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That one's done.
Next one is the Council on Aging. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people whose terms are ending
Make a motion that Marjorie Peterson.
for 3-year terms.
Isn't that 5?
Is there another? Oh, there's another one at the bottom. Okay. No, she would be
She's the council director. She's
sort
the
of
one-
ex officio
So she
person.
doesn't need
Yeah.
to be officially appointed because she's.
Well, she does,
ex
but
officio.
it's
Okay,
different from the others.
okay.
Marjorie Peterson, Joseph Cover, Richard Preble, Mary Harada. I'd like to make a motion to appoint them to the Council on Aging, terms ending 6/15/22.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Make a motion that Teresa Woodbury, Director of Senior Center and Council on Aging, her term expiring on this committee will be 6/15/20.
I'll second, so that's just a 1-year term.
Yep.
Okay, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. That one's done.
Okay.
Make a motion to appoint Robert James to the Historical Commission with term ending 6/15/20.
How come his ends in 1 and some of the others end in
2 years from now.
3-year terms?
Oh, that should be 2022.
Okay, so the term ending 6/15/2022.
Yep.
Amendment motion to 22.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Historic District Commission, we've got, we don't have any people
That need to be
that,
appointed.
that-
Yeah, I met with Diane today. She's going to follow up with each of them, and
so
so
there's nobody that has requested reappointment?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
pretty inactive committee.
yeah.
so we expect to come back 2 weeks with information on this one.
And the regional, second regional,
We don't appoint people to the school committee.
that's fine. And then Christopher Wild, we don't know if he wants to be part of the Whittier one anymore.
Personnel committee, we did.
And then,
We just haven't heard from Chris?
Right. Now, this year is a little different. Typically, the Selectmen's office would handle all of this. Obviously, we're short-staffed, so Mike's office has stepped up and helped. His office sent a bunch of letters. I've been compiling information. It's possible.
I think it's an appointment of the school committee.
Okay,
You
see,
know what? It is, because it used to be.
I think it
and
is.
then they changed it.
But it was automatically one member of the school committee for a while, wasn't it?
It could be, but
Yeah.
they selected them.
so I will remove him from this list. One thing you'll remember from last year and maybe prior years, you had a single database with all the board and committee appointments, all the staff appointments, all of the sub-appointments of staff. So for instance, Mike has 5 or 6 hats between public information officer and, chief procurement officer. All of those are separate appointments. So that was all in this database. So part of the time it's taken is to disaggregate. So what I tried to put in front of you is just those commissions and committees appointed by this board. So this one I didn't know, so I'll take this one off. I have a separate page in the database with appointments by other than the Board of Selectmen. So I'll add the Whittier tech to that.
We used to do that. That's only, we did it, I don't even know if we were supposed to do it, but we did it. That just changed. So,
Okay,
So I can see why it would be on there.
got it.
You know what I mean? We used to appoint that person. And then the previous superintendent took it away from us.
Okay, next committee is the Mill Pond Committee. There are 4 people requesting 3-year terms. There will, even at that point, there will be one open position for a 3-year term, and there will be, because there's a, Dina is requested no reappointment. Okay, so these were for people being reappointed to the Mill Pond Committee for a term ending 6/15/2022.
So moved. So, but,
I have a question actually regarding, so Deb Hamilton is currently on the committee or not?
She is, and again, I inherited the spreadsheet. It says 2018. There have been other instances where she's been to the meetings this year, but I just don't want to unilaterally change
The number
something.
might be wrong.
It might be wrong, but I don't want to change it without doing the research, and I'm
Yeah,
not.
it's
I didn't
not
do the
worth
research,
fighting, spending hours on it. So, either one of you make a motion,
I
yeah.
move that Deb Hamilton, Ryan Goodwin, Zip Corning, and Matthew Schwam be appointed to the Mill Pond Committee for a term ending 6/15/2022.
second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion that we move Robin Pendergrass up to a full member. So not being an associate member any longer, but her term ending 6/15/22.
Okay. Is there a reason that you chose Robin Pendergrass? Well, I guess for discussion, I need a second. I'll second and then discussion.
Yeah, okay, discussion.
Because when she came in front of us before, she said she wanted to be a new member, so she started off as an associate member, but there wasn't any, the people that year who were already on the committee wanted to be reappointed, and there was no real space for her, but she wanted to get involved. She lives on the Mill Pond.
Yep.
When it butts it, so we said that time if there's ever a position for a full member, would be glad to consider.
Okay, that's a good reason. The only reason why I asked is because I saw Paula McDowell was also an associate currently, so I didn't, but.
She's actually not, is she currently?
Well,
She put in for interest to be on it. Is she on there now?
Said she was.
Oh, okay.
we didn't, shown here
Okay.
as being an associate with
Okay.
term ending, actually it shows the term ending 2020, okay.
Yep. But
But the reason, if Robin Pendergast lives on Mill Pond, I mean, that's probably a very
little
sensible
trumps it.
person to have.
It more,
Right.
involved.
more weight in, yeah. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so, did we appoint Polly as the associate or no?
No, I didn't.
Well, she's not
She's not up
oh,
yet.
I'm sorry, Yeah, it says
No,
here,
no.
no, term expiration is 2019.
Now we have,
No,
she
she
is. No,
Glenn.
she is up.
2019.
Because it's just a one-year appointment as an associate.
So I would move to appoint Polly McDowell then as an associate member and through 6/15/2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
I'm looking at the wrong thing. So we're done appointing there. We have a full member, but we're missing one associate there.
correct.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, CIC. That's at the top of the, whatever page this is.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so we have already appointed our selectmen's rep. Okay, so this is, I have to ask a question about this. This Dugan Sherwood,
Yeah,
is that, do you know who that is?
I do. He's on the
Yeah.
Energy Advisory Committee.
Yes, and he was on the CIC, I remember.
Did he ever go to a meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have no idea what his,
Yeah, because we didn't see, yeah.
But
When I was on
when
there,
I was on
nobody
it
knew where he
2
was.
years ago, he was. He didn't go when you were there?
so has Dugan not
No.
requested reappointment then?
I haven't heard from him.
Okay, we should probably wait. I know, I know Dugan, I know,
Maybe you want to reach out to him.
Yeah, he's on the Energy Advisory Committee. I know he, he now has a position, he's like, I don't know, director or something like that of the Haverhill Chamber of Commerce. So he's been very busy, and maybe he hasn't, what we should find out if he wants to continue here.
If he wants to, that's great, but
Yeah.
all the meetings, there was enough for us to say, do we have the right email anymore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I'll.
Is that right, Judy?
Yeah, she did.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm making sure, because I want to make sure sometimes I misremember. But I'm almost positive that was the case.
So,
So I think it's good that we reach out before we don't do it.
yeah, Angus, is it best that you reach out or?
Yeah, I talked to Diane about each of these today, and she may already have. I know that she did some outreach last week, and we filled a lot of gaps. Actually, if you saw this a week ago, we've made leaps and bounds. There's a handful left, so Diane's chipping away
Okay,
at that. and
okay,
I
so you
appreciate her
have
work on it.
Lenny is,
He's moving,
he's
so he doesn't
moving,
wanna-
so we have a request to appoint Polly McDowell to this committee, at the bottom of the list there.
Okay, make a motion that Polly McDonald be put on the CIC, with term ending 6/15/22.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and I'm correct, am I correct that the FinCom represents its own appointments to both this committee and to the Investment Policy Committee?
Yes.
Okay, good, I've asked them to put that on their agenda for their meeting next Monday.
Because they often change it, yeah.
But that will still leave opening, at least one opening, maybe two,
One, yeah,
or one, two.
no, this is one.
Well,
Just
we
one?
don't know about, well, okay, yeah.
The only one that's in question is Dugan Sherwood. Because and then Lenny is out, and then we just filled that with Polly.
Right.
So if Dugan wants to do it, then we don't need
Right.
anybody.
Good point, yep.
Because the first one there, the 19 is mine, but Rick's gonna take much. He was. Okay.
Cable Advisory Committee, do you want to do that,
Yeah,
Glenn?
about to.
Okay. I nominate Glenn Kemper as to the Cable Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
I understand. Thank you, gentlemen, for the confidence.
That's another
next-
committee with openings if people are out there
Please.
listening.
Make a motion, that we, Jocelyn
Cosentino?
thank you, and Rose Videra to the Cultural Council, term ending 6/15/22.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have two people at the bottom that want to be on the council,
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
and we can have a lot or more. Are we creating chaos by too many people, or no?
No?
If I'm reading this right, the law allows you to have as many as
22.
22 members.
Okay.
Can I back up for a second? I did notice Rose Terry did she request to be?
Oh, that's a good
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Sorry,
My
good,
mistake.
good call, Rick. Okay,
Thank you.
we missed
My
it.
mistake. Sorry about that. I was just trying to get through this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess we should back
So,
up. and-
listen, I'm gonna make a, how do you rescind that? You have to-
Well, I guess we can amend make a motion to amend the motion we just passed.
No.
I don't know what the right process is.
I make, how do you?
Rescind a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do
Reconsider.
this? I'd reconsider, motion that, Jocelyn Costantino, whatever.
Jocelyn Cosentino.
I put my X to it because I thought it was done, now I can't remember the name. Amy Friend and Helena Dion as, cultural council members, all their terms ending 6/15/22.
I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we have one potential person there, right? And then we did the open space already, except we're missing an alternate member
Okay, so we got,
because he did not request to be reappointed.
does CPC have at-large people? Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yeah,
She is, Sherry, Prude has asked it.
Yeah, she put in a letter requesting reappointment there, and I did confirm with Tracy Watson that the Housing Authority has recently reappointed Mary Harada for another 3-year term, so.
Yep.
So you can update your thing to 2022.
Okay, so Sherry,
I'd make a motion that we appoint Sherry Prune as the at-large member to the Community Preservation Committee.
for a term ending 6/15/2022.
Correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For that one.
Okay, Energy Advisory.
I make a motion that you appoint Elisa Grammer, Arthur Wallace, Richard Parker.
Can I
Oh, wait.
put in a request to be appointed at this point?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Yeah, you mean, I was gonna go down the line, so you caught me, good.
So that's all we got.
Yeah. You know Elizabeth Cowan, she doesn't wanna do it?
I'm guessing she hasn't gotten to,
Just, yeah, she's, okay, why don't we appoint her anyways? Let her, they're all, we have to.
No, we gotta wait on those
I
three.
didn't realize they're all,
so why don't we just do Alyssa Grammer and Chip Wallace?
And not you?
Well, yeah, and me, but I can't vote on me. so-
Okay, second,
All in favor?
aye.
Sorry. Make a motion that Rick Parker be on the Energy Advisory Committee, term ending 6/15/2020.
We just did him, but,
No, we didn't, he didn't vote on himself.
okay, second,
Oh, yeah.
aye.
Wow, that was really tough. Okay, you wanna stop tonight? Are we done?
No, we'll bang them all out. Come on.
Well, actually, I know Wendy's here for one last thing, because
Are you?
aren't you also, didn't I see something about you being, alternate for the planning board? Yeah.
Is that what you're here for? Still here? He was, blame him, he was the one in charge to go through the thing to make sure you guys got out here.
I don't know if it's on your list.
The paperwork is in here. It's not separately agended, but yeah, the paperwork's in the packet. But they got a lot of paper in front of them in their defense.
I just assumed it would appear on this list, I'm just looking for it.
Okay, let's go. Investment Policy Committee.
Well, hold on, why don't you gonna go home after we do this?
No.
Oh. Huh?
I should clarify, the wage schedule is not before the board tonight.
All right, yes, could you please vote?
So
Oh, okay.
it
don't look at the
didn't come
agenda?
together in time, so. Yeah, it's on the agenda, it just didn't, I didn't want to put something out that wasn't fully vetted, so.
I should have realized that, sorry.
But it's partial. Yeah, I should have, okay. All right. So, well, it's not on this thing, so what is it, gentlemen? This meeting, okay, so, this meeting, so make a motion that we appoint Wendy Reed to, the alternate member of the planning board with the year ending, that's what I'm looking for.
Where is that?
This is a piece of paper. This is it right here. The planning board sent, Leah sent over to me.
I think we usually do that one in 1 year.
Okay,
Yeah, that is
term ending,
one.
term ending 6/15/20.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Sorry about the famous voice on this slide.
Okay, we done with this? We can't finish this next week?
No, we're gonna finish it right now.
We're gonna have to finish some of them because a lot of people haven't gotten back to us.
I know, but
Okay, where are we? No.
IP, investment policy.
So we have, Mark Madden, Gene Trim, Forbes Dury, and OJ Virtual Observer.
Is, Forbes is the, FinCom representative.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
he's
we don't
still
vote on
there.
that.
Yep, okay.
So I'll make a motion that Lock Madden and Gene Trim be appointed to the Investment Policy Committee, term ending 6/15/22.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carr.
Why don't we decide on that later after we hear the recommendations from our,
Yeah, I agree.
from our illustrious town.
River access, that's only 1 year, okay.
I make a motion that we appoint Robert Phillips, Lisa Grammer, Barry LaCroix to the Rivers Access Committee.
No, Barry didn't
And
say
actually, I
yes.
heard from Barry Sunday. Barry is definitely interested.
Okay.
So it's,
Term ending 6/15/2020.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Make a motion. Yeah, I guess we have to, huh? We have to end. Bicentennial Committee, obviously their appointments are gonna end in June. And the bicentennial celebration and so forth and so on is not going to be done until July. So do we need to appoint them to the 20th or just do it and then if, after it, they disband?
Well, there may be bills to deal with and stuff,
Got
and,
it.
yeah.
Make a motion that we appoint Stephen Swallow, Casey Swallow, Christel Gorinovich, Cindy Sauter, Gary Ganache, or whatever, Judith Gregg, and Jocelyn Fawcett. To Bicentennial Committee, all terms ending 6/15/2020.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Make a motion to appoint Robert James to Veterans Grave Officer, Bridge Street Rural Cemetery and Merrimack Cemeteries, term ending 6/15/20.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I make a motion that Robert James is our West Newbury representative of the Board of Directors of the Eastern District Veterans Affairs, term ending 6/15/20.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I make a motion that Brian Murphy.
Hang on, does that get appointed by the planning board
No,
or
this is
us?
This is us.
Okay.
Brian Murphy to the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, term ending 6/15/20.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. That's it, right?
That's it, see, we did it.
Thank you.
made a
Just seems-
ton of progress. That's terrific, guys.
That seems, now listen, you have to fill out every single one of those little certificates. No, I'm just kidding, you're not doing that still, are you?
Oh,
We don't do that, do we anymore? I thought we went away from, that was my, with Mary, I thought we went away from that. We used to have to fill out every little thing
And
and
like-
sign every single one.
Like the emergency management,
Yeah, yeah.
radiation officer and all that stuff, and yeah.
Well,
Why don't you come up?
give me a list and I'll have to send it.
So you can get through the
Great.
Yeah,
roadblock.
send her a letter rather than.
yeah, there are certain things like the ADA coordinator, we need to submit documentation to the state, but that's a short list of things. So,
Is
good.
there a reason why the salary, the Board of Health salary, or Concom salary, I mean, wasn't on tonight's agenda?
Yeah, because,
You may have explained that, I don't recall.
no, I didn't. The wage schedule, I don't want to bring it forward till I've got it fully reviewed with staff,
Okay,
and we're short-staffed and we're behind.
yeah, okay,
It's as simple as that.
okay.
So, I mean, some of them are very straightforward, probably 85% are just, and I have, actually, let me be clear. I have the numbers, I just don't have them in the format this board's used to seeing. So getting the numbers from the database I used for budgeting into the format is probably 4 or 5 hours of work, and it's just, that's the answer.
Well, maybe you don't need to do that.
Well, and I
Why don't you
scratch my
start-
head
Why
about
don't you
that.
just give us what you got?
Yeah, why don't you start doing it your way to make it easier?
Don't,
Not our way.
don't create a new document.
Well, and I've really wrestled with that because there's certain things in the format that the board's used to seeing. It's got, you know, hourly versus biweekly versus stipend. It's got, you know, grade of the position, you know, pay range grade. It's got all the vehicle stipends. I have all of that in my budgeting. I found that thing so clunky to work with that very early in the budget process, like last fall, I built out my own personnel budgeting worksheet, which is what I had used in my prior job, and adapted it for this. So it's very usable for me. It's not something I just click print. It's a big database with it's not formatted to print. It's a working document. So it's basically I've got to decide how to present that so that it's familiar to the board and doesn't just raise more questions. So, you know, I hadn't decided if I'm going to update last year's wage schedule with my numbers or adapt my wage schedule so it's, you know, presentation quality. It's one of those two things, but that's why.
But for instance, for that particular position, the wage schedule will reflect
What was in the approved budget, right?
Okay, next item is review and approve job description for planning board administrative assistant.
You have any problems with this, Angus?
No, I don't.
I have a question, Angus. How does this is for a new hire with not necessarily with only high school minimum high school graduate minimum qualifications, and where their recommendation was from what I'm looking at, in the grade 4 range. We have other administrative assist in the range that they're putting up was $19 to $23 an hour. We have other administrative assistants that have been here a long time, probably in that range. It just seems, I don't know, it just seems high to me compared to other people that have been doing full-time jobs here a lot longer than that, and this person is coming in with no experience and you know, no degree requirements at a pretty high level.
Well, and part of that, the budgeted amount for this position took into account the potential that it be an internal hire. So in order for it to be attractive for an internal hire, I felt it needed to be at the wage of most of the internal hires, which is more at the high end of this range.
Okay.
You see, because back when we were doing the budget a couple of months ago, we didn't know how it would play out. And honestly, we still don't. It's not out of the question there could be an internal candidate. I don't know. But I think that if, you know, since this does kind of muddy the water on wage, you know, maybe you could strike, maybe you could vote this and strike that whole section about salary, because that's not really necessarily in a typical job description.
No, never is.
I mean, it would say, so this does say level 4 up in the heading where it says job title. It says in parentheses L4.
Oh, okay.
Which is consistent with other job descriptions in terms of it having the grade on the job description. To the extent there's consistency, that's one. Leah had asked me what are the elements it ought to have, and I said it ought to have the level. It ought to say who the position reports to, which it does. But I think if you struck that whole sentence and then just took that up when you review the wage schedule at your next meeting, personally, I would see any problem with that.
Okay.
But I can tell you that was why I budgeted a somewhat higher number than a starting position, just in the event it was an internal hire, so that it'd be attractive to an internal candidate.
Okay. So what do you want to do, Archie? Take everything off pertaining to money?
Yes.
So I make a motion to approve this job description, but anything about money I would want to take off.
I'll second that.
Now, how about the level, the grade? Do you want to leave that as a level 4, or do you want to?
You could put like 2 to 4, depending on what you get.
Yeah.
That's quite a range.
Or 3 to 4.
3 to 4. Let's say 3 to 4. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that friendly amendment.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Where are we at?
We're not doing the wage thing, right?
We're not doing the wage. Angus is gonna give us a, well, let's not go through the whole thing.
Update on project?
Yeah,
Anything you want to highlight, Angus? We don't have to go through every single
Yeah.
thing, or?
one thing, Angus, that I thought we should have, we have it in here with the, infrastructure related to the water tank, with the, meeting with the neighbors, and we had brought this, I think this is something that is gonna happen in FY '20, and not 20 plus, but 20 is, just somehow, communications and meeting with the neighbors related to the Pentucket project is something that, and maybe in your capacity on the school building committee, that could be addressed too.
I agree with you. I will say I did bring that suggestion to the last school building committee meeting.
What did they say?
It did not go over well.
Oh.
They said, look, the town can do what it wants to do with the town's residents, but the school building committee was really clear that it did not see that it was the venue. Basically, the response was they have a outside project manager where there's going to be phone numbers that are be clearly posted on signs. There will be hours of construction that will be clearly posted, and that there will be a clear path for abutters or whomever, people to call to deal with any issues in terms of noise or
But
dust.
they're gonna call you or us.
I know. So I thought the suggestion a couple of meetings ago to initiate neighborhood outreach was a great suggestion. I continue to think it is. My thought was that could go through the school building committee, but having discussed it with them, they were clear. They said that is not their role. And we do need to remember that is a regional committee. So, I mean, their basic approach is there's going to be strict controls placed on the contractor. That's all going to be clearly communicated. And then once it's started, it's the outside project manager, and that's the path that you follow. But like I said, I think your suggestion, or whomever made the suggestion the last 2 meetings ago, I think that's a fine idea to set up a mailing list and to send something out that's informational. On the water tank, we're very close. We've got a letter basically in final form. We got all the labels printed, so that'll probably go out this week. So
But
we could do the
sort of
same
have
kind
like
thing with the school.
invented the wheel, now
Right.
you can sort of
Exactly.
change the wheel instead of reinventing it.
Yeah. No, I think it's been totally the most valuable thing, and going back to my first job as a town planner, being proactive and communicating with the abutters is the best advice you can give on any project, and most developers don't do it, and it's the best thing they can do. So,
Cool.
I'll make sure that's on this list.
And I had another just sort of question about, you have, it's one specific item, but calculate indirect costs for the water department. Haven't we already done that, or isn't that sort of pro forma, or what?
Well, that's the thing with the amount of transition we've had in the finance office, all the things that were pro forma weren't when I got here. Because when I got here, it was my first couple of weeks, and I was being asked to calculate this, and there was no methodology. There was no one had, with the transition from Andy, this wasn't talked about. So I asked Lori, we have now.
Where's that number? Well, it was always just, we balance it with what they charge us.
Well, but there's a pretty, it's not that complicated, but there's a pretty detailed spreadsheet that underlies that. We've now uncovered that, dusted that off.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have. That's all basically done. It is something that has to happen on an annual basis, and but at this point, we can just plug in the numbers and do
The
it.
Commonwealth says we have to do that, or?
No, it's actually part of, it's one of the community compact financial policies. So this is something that we, with those financial policies, I brought that policy of the indirect cost to the Water Commission after working with Mike Goutet on it and getting it to where, basically, my goal with Mike was to say, it's been done a certain way a lot of years. We want to continue to do it that way. We want to make sure this policy reflects how it's been done. So
Is it gonna end up being 11 times more than
No,
it was?
no.
No.
My goal anyway was to keep it consistent with how it's been done. So we've now codified that in that policy. I brought that policy back to this board probably in January, February. It had been referred from the Water Commission for reasons I can't remember. It was never actually voted, so it's still a draft policy. So that's something, I can bring back. I could bring that to the next meeting. It's done. It's ready to go. That was one of those community compact policies that was actually, in my view, timely.
Okay.
Because it actually answered a question, because it had been done a certain way all these years, but it wasn't written down anywhere. So this policy now does spell out exactly what's included and what's not. Just one example, in the Commonwealth kind of model policy, it includes, among other things, the cost of the annual audit. That had never been part of that, but that's $18,500 for the town. So that's now in there.
Prorated, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, we can get the policy approved. We'll continue to do the actual apportionment the way we have, but getting a policy approved just kind of, that way the Water Commission and this board, because upstairs, it was kind of a black box. They're like, well, we're just given a number. We don't really know where it comes from. But the value that's come out of working together is they now see what's the math
what
behind
they're
that.
actually being charged, yeah.
Right. So, we have made a lot of progress on that one.
Okay. Anybody else, Glenn?
No.
I'm good.
Okay, meeting schedule.
Is that because of the summer?
The main reason I wanted this on is because of the July 8th is that bicentennial event, and that would normally be a selectmen meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted to adjust the schedule to allow the selectmen to go to that.
July 8th.
The History and Heritage Town Hall exhibit that was talked about earlier in the meeting,
Is that during, it'd be there, it's 5:30 to 7:30, I think.
I think 6 to 8.
Thanks.
So I just didn't know if you want to make an adjustment, great. If not, that's fine too. I didn't want the schedule to come without having had that conversation.
So, why don't we skip a meeting? Do we have to have a meeting that week? Since it's that Monday is after July 4th?
That's the day after the 4th, basically.
Yeah. Some people might want to take a long weekend. Some people might not want to have to worry about
Preparing a
preparing packets, so they could have a nice long July 4th and take Friday off and spend time with family. So there's going to be a long week that we're probably going to have to be at all these bicentennial things anyway. And if something comes up, we're going to be at these bicentennial things, we can call an emergency meeting, since we're probably all three of us going to be there, and we can address that, but let's plan on not having one.
That sounds good, yeah.
Sounds great.
So the next.
I just started.
No, we're trying to make your life easier.
And it all just started coming to me, obviously. I had no clue.
If you keep talking, we'll break into applause eventually, because we're really liking what you're saying.
So let's just do it that way, and if we have to have one, we'll have one. Because we're all gonna be around that week probably, because.
I mean, we might have to vote on the wage schedule or,
No,
so,
that's just, we have another meeting.
I know,
before
but
that.
in case there's,
Okay. Well, let's look optimistic that we've done the right the first time.
and,
So we would meet on the 15th, or would we completely skip a meeting and meet then on the 22nd?
So what's our next meeting?
It would normally be the 22nd.
No, what's our
and
next
what
meeting?
about-
Your next
what about-
meeting is the 24th of June, then it would be July 8th and July 22.
are we gonna have to approve any end of year, transfers? That's,
We
Possi-
still-
it's
we
possible.
still have-
Yeah.
We still have that time, don't you have 30 days?
I think
Whatever it
it's,
is?
isn't it 15 days?
it's the 15th.
I think the idea of holding the 15th is a good idea.
The 15th, think you have to
So right-
do it by the
You know,
15th.
we might be able to aim for a lighter agenda, but to have the date held, I think is a good
But
suggestion.
so have
so
one the
the
15th
first-
and the 22nd, or just have
Yeah.
one the 15th?
Just like in a thing of, like, if we have to vote some numbers and stuff on the 15th.
And that's it,
Yeah,
and have the big meeting on the 22nd.
yeah.
I mean, this is a radical idea, but if you skipped the 8th and then just started the 15th
then
every
we
other
read
week,
next on the
so
15th.
15th, 29th, 12th, 26th, I don't know if there's a magic to the every other week.
Listen, we used to have selectmen's meetings every single Monday.
Well, that's how it's been
I had more
for
selectmen's
much
meetings
of my
every
time,
single
yeah.
Monday than every other Monday. Then for some strange reason, somebody came up with a great idea. Why are we doing this every Monday? Why don't we have it every other?
Mm-hmm.
And then the summertime, back then, we only had like one meeting.
The summer, there was supposed to be one, but it never happened.
Yeah, that's true. So why don't we do the 15th and the 22nd and make sure the 15th is the,
Just stuff that absolutely positively has to be done, yeah.
I'm amenable to that.
So if in fact there's nothing that absolutely positively has to be done?
There will be. It's almost certain.
well, there could be a few things,
I mean,
just
it
so
could
the
be the-
22nd meeting's not too crazy.
Right.
too. You can say, you know,
Right.
there's a couple things that aren't gonna take too long, because we're gonna have to have input. Okay, so then you're saying to us, August, it would be the 15th and the 29th? When's Labor Day?
Let's see, August.
Because you just said this is that radical.
Your normal schedule in August, if we go every other week strictly, would be the 5th and the 19th. And actually, as I'm looking at my own summer schedule, I'd probably favor keeping that.
That's a good, those are two good days, yeah.
Perfect.
Let's not move those, yeah.
Let's do July, not have one on the 8th, and have one on the 15th and the 22nd.
Great, and then the 5th and the 19th of August, and then we'll start fresh with the Tuesday after Labor Day on September 3rd. And just go from there.
Okay,
Great.
good. Make a motion to adjourn?
Second that.
No, I'm kidding. He's got one more. I'm just kidding. I want to, that's an incentive, so
Yep.
Angus goes fast through his push.
I think
Oh,
Oh, my
oh,
God.
yeah. Okay.
yeah, next item's the bicentennial. I think it's going to be a great event, really a whole series of great events, and yeah, we're focused on the details. There's a bunch of details, but I do think we're making progress.
Parking. How's the parking going? I hear it's perfect. Is that parking garage going to be in place on the riding rink before the event?
And the monorail is going
Yeah, it's going to be like Disneyland.
So I was in touch with Cindy Sauter in the last day or so. She's taking the lead on behalf of the Bicentennial Committee on the townwide mailing. I know I'd mentioned that to you at the last meeting. And I believe the deadline is this Wednesday to get it to the printer to get that in people's hands. And a real focus of that is to make people aware of the satellite parking and the shuttles. And we may be over planning, but we'd rather be over prepared than under prepared. And the big thing we don't want to have happen is after the fireworks, when everyone's trying to leave at once. We want to make sure that's managed as well as can be.
And the selectmen have preferred parking up there, correct? Because we'll be in and out all day, checking the scene. I would need access.
If you are officially event volunteers will have a special parking place. So that goes for every event volunteer,
We'll
so.
be volunteering.
We would love to have, and actually, I mean, Glenn, I know you're already volunteering, so yes,
Yeah.
that's the answer. But the answer is yes, because you're a volunteer, not because you're a selectman. That's what
Did I get anything for this? Other than text at 5:31 in the morning on Friday morning, telling me that the construction started at Drake's Landing and it's too loud. I get those. What, we gotta, yeah,
I've been meeting with the building commissioner on that.
thank you. Okay, anything else?
Then the other thing that Senator Tar alluded to, there was, as you know, there was an earmark in the budget, or you may or may not know, I think you know, there was an earmark in the draft budget for the library, and because of the CPC funding, I was made aware that there might be an opportunity to reassign some of that money to a different project, and in the last couple of weeks, I'd been corresponding with some residents with some suggestions to improve the ADA accessibility of the Page School playgrounds, and had been corresponding with Wayne and with Greg Haddon and Superintendent Bartholomew, and everyone thought this was a great idea. So when the opportunity arose, we wrote it up, we sent it into the senator's office, and based on what he said earlier tonight, it sounds like I'm hopeful we could get that state funding for this Page School handicap improvements, and we'd still go forward with the library with the CPC funding. But I made it very clear in my letter, if they cannot reallocate the funding, we do want that state money for the library.
Do you want to get into the reasons why, or it's probably not said about the library? Why wouldn't they want it?
I don't want to speak for them.
Okay. Okay, good, but I'm glad that we have, thank you for your.
Angus
thank you for-
did a great service for the town in turning that around and coming up with an alternative in short order. It was great.
Making lemonade out of lemon.
Well, it's great, because in corresponding with the residents, I was, we were helpful, and I was channeling them toward the CPC meeting a week from Thursday, and but I had been realistic and said, the earliest we can get funding allocated is late October, so realistically, improvements aren't really going to take place for a while. So when I was able to notify the resident that, hey, look, this might or might not happen, but if this does happen, we could have actual funding 6 months earlier. I mean, they're delighted. So hopefully it all works out.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
Make a motion to adjourn.
One thing, you're gonna have 2 vacancies in elected boards.
We're gonna have 2 vacancies on elected boards
Board of Health.
for the Board of, I'm doing this because you're not on the microphone.
Okay.
For the Board of Health,
And for the library.
Board of Library Trustees,
Yes, so we're gonna have to have a joint meeting with those 2 boards and you might wanna announce that if anyone's interested in those boards, to contact us.
Can I be on the Board of Library Trustees?
Yep.
How do I go about doing that?
You'd have to be appointed by a committee of this board and the remaining trustees.
That ain't gonna happen. So what about the? I want to be on the Board of Library Trustees actually after this whole thing.
So that's gonna be one of your meetings.
So do we have to, there is some type of notification. If I can remember correctly, the boards that the vacancies, aren't they the ones that are supposed to?
Supposed to notify you.
Exactly.
And then you schedule
A joint meeting.
Joint meeting with 7 days notice.
Correct.
Who's stepping down?
Kim Cole is stepping down from the Board of Health,
She's moving, I think.
and Virginia Sullivan is stepping down from the Board of.
Because she is moving, correct?
They're both moving.
Yeah.
They're both sold house.
Yes. Make a motion to adjourn. Okay, so, but we have to wait for them. They're the ones so hopefully, my point being was, sometimes it hasn't happened to those 2 boards. So they might not be aware that they're the ones who actually
No,
have.
they're aware, but.
You told them, they're aware we. Okay, good. Because sometimes
Okay.
they have to get the ball rolling. Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.